If you're taking photos of a digital camera like this and the ISO is set high, then there's a real risk that digital noise could sadly spoil your images, but there may be a solution because Adobe have recently released an update that uses AI technology to reduce digital noise. Now, I've been playing with this for the last couple of days and I've been so impressed that I thought I'd put a quick video together to show it to you because I think many of you watching this video could benefit from this. But I also thought it'd be really fun to see just how far we can push it. Welcome to the Photogenius channel. Hi, Paul here from Photogenius. Welcome to my channel. Now, if you've seen any of my previous videos, there's a good chance you've heard me or seen me talking about ISO. It's a great camera function. Typically, I encourage people to keep the ISO low so you get cleaner, better looking images. Hence the t-shirt. But in this video, we're actually going to bend the rules. We're going to push the ISO, which is not something I would typically encourage people to do. Now, to help us, we're going to be using some software. So Adobe recently put out an update to Lightroom and also Photoshop, and there's a new feature called Denoise. And using this, we're going to see if we can take an image that is a disaster and turn it into something that we would be happy to share. Now, some of you watching this video may not know what ISO is, what it does, and how we use it. So for your benefit, I'm going to quickly go over the very basics. Now, of course, if you already know all about ISO, you can either watch this as a refresher or you can just skip ahead to the next chapter. Okay, so let's start with the basics. What is ISO? ISO is a camera function that allows you to adjust how bright or dark your image will be. But as well as ISO, there are also two additional ways to adjust exposure. These are aperture and shutter speed. Adjusting any of these will affect how bright or dark the image will be, and this is indicated by the camera's light meter. Whilst increasing ISO will make an image brighter, this does come at a price: digital noise. Take a look at these two images, which initially look very similar. However, if we zoom in, it soon becomes clear that they are very different. Often referred to as a grainy look, this is digital noise. Whilst I encourage you to keep the ISO low where possible, there will certainly be times when you will need to increase the ISO. And this is commonly if you're taking photos in poor light and you're using your camera handheld and you don't have access to a tripod. All of these images were taken with the ISO set higher than I would normally use due to the fact they were taken either in the evening or indoors. Now zoom in and you can clearly see some digital noise, but at these levels I believe it's acceptable and is really only an issue when viewing the image on a large scale. So a question I often get asked is how high can I push the ISO on my camera before digital noise becomes a problem? Now that's not an easy question to answer because the results will be different depending on the camera. For example, if I set both these cameras to ISO 3200, the results with this camera will be different to this camera. And this is down to things like the sensor type, the sensor size, and also the processor. Every camera is different. To illustrate this, let's take a look at some test shots. Beginning at ISO 200, neither of the images display any concernable level of digital noise. It's really at 3200 ISO where we start to see a clear difference, and beyond that the crop sensor of the Canon camera simply cannot compete with the full frame sensor of the Nikon Z6. These are two very different cameras and certainly not a fair comparison, but a good idea I think to test your camera and see how far you can push the ISO and get a usable image. At what point does digital noise become a problem is of course subjective. It's down to the individual and also maybe down to what you intend to do with the image. For example, if you're sharing your images just to social media, then because those images are being viewed on a small scale, on a small screen, some digital noise is really not going to be much of a problem. But maybe you're thinking of printing one of your images. Now, particularly on a large scale, digital noise can be a real concern. Denoise is available in both Adobe Lightroom and also Photoshop via Camera Raw. Now, if you want to try either of these, there is a free trial version available. You can download that using the link below this week's video. But I have to be honest, I'm not using the trial version, so I don't know if Denoise is a feature of the free trial. Maybe somebody can let me know in the comments below. So here we have a picture of a pelican that I shot on the Brisbane Bayside some time ago using a Canon R6. Now the ISO is pretty high here at 2500. Now the reason for that is the lens was an 800mm telephoto with a fixed aperture of f11. Now if you're wondering, the program I'm using here is called Camera Raw. If you open a raw image in Photoshop, it opens first in this program and then you move into Photoshop. Anybody familiar with Lightroom will recognize the control panel over to the right, which is virtually identical. Now I'm pretty happy with the way this image looks. If we zoom in, there are some traces of noise, and if we zoom in even more, it becomes more obvious. But that's not a problem. We're going to fix it using Denoise. Now all we need to do is go to the details section over to the right, look for noise reduction, and here you'll find Denoise. The enhanced panel appears and a preview window allows us to see how the enhanced image will look. Hold down the mouse if you want to compare with the original version, and as you can see, the difference is clear. So next, click Enhance and the software begins doing its magic. Now this may take a few moments depending on your computer. Once done, you will have two versions in view, the original version and a second enhanced version, which is a DNG file. Now let's compare the two side by side. Next, using this image of my dog, I wanted to see how Denoise handled fine detail like hair. Now as you can see from the original image, noise isn't really a big problem until we zoom right in, then it becomes quite visible. Now here's the enhanced version after using Denoise, and once again let's compare side by side. Now I have to say I've been so impressed with the results, particularly because Denoise doesn't compromise on the clarity of the image. Now I'm sure you'll agree, really impressive stuff, but as I said in the intro to this week's video, I really want to have some fun with this now and see how far I can push it. These images were taken at night with the Canon R6, which by the way is a great camera. Now despite the floodlights, the light was particularly poor, so I had to push the ISO much further than I would normally dare. ISO 64,000, resulting, as you can see, in very noisy looking images. Okay, so here's one of the images, this of a guy saving a potential goal. You can't sadly see the ball because it's gone over the top of the net, but he did make a save. As you can see, if I zoom in, the image is incredibly noisy. It's ridiculous. This, the result of shooting at 64,000 ISO. Hopefully, because at the moment this image looks pretty poor, hopefully Denoise is going to save the day. So I'm going to click on Denoise. The little panel preview pops up. Wherever I click with a mouse is the area of the image that will be previewed. So I'm going to click over here on the lettering BOQ. As you can see, previous or without enhance, it looks absolutely awful. But this looks pretty amazing. Now this is at 75%. Let's click on his boot. Again, without any enhancement, it's absolutely awful. Really lots of color, digital noise. It's just absolutely awful. So let's go for it. Let's click on enhance, and again there's just a short wait while the software does its magic, hopefully not too long. And here we go, it's done. So let's zoom in, and yeah, it's just it's absolutely unbelievable actually. I mean, there's a fair amount of softness to this image, but that's a result of the ISO being so high, but there's no noise now. The digital noise is all but gone. As I said, there is some smoothness, so unless this guy waxes his legs, I'm sure they're not normally that smooth, but the image looks absolutely amazing now. I mean, it's now, we've turned a disastrous image, an image that was incredibly noisy, into an image that I would happily let people see. I would put on a website or I would share to social media. No problem at all. Absolutely fantastic. Whilst many photographers, artists and people working in creative industries are voicing their concerns, and rightly so, about where AI technology is heading, I do think with Adobe Denoise, this is an example of where AI can actually be beneficial. Now, Adobe may have given us this great new tool that we can use, but I don't think it's an excuse to become a lazy photographer. I still believe that you should consider carefully what ISO you set your camera to. In fact, consider it as carefully as you would your shutter speed or your aperture setting. If you don't need to increase the ISO, don't. For that reason, I think the wording on the t-shirt still applies, which is just as well, because I really don't think this works. Now, before I go, I have one very quick favour to ask of you, and it's very simple. If you've enjoyed this video and if you like this channel, please consider giving the video a thumbs up. Hitting the like button, which you'll find somewhere down here, makes a massive difference because it helps the videos get noticed. That helps the channel grow. The more the channel grows, the more videos I can bring you. Now, so you don't miss out on future videos, also make sure you subscribe to the channel and make sure you hit the notification bell. That's about it. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Hope to see you again sometime soon. See ya. Bye.